quarter of the country are independents. Now, last time, both Biden and Trump came to that election with equal bases. But Biden won independents by 13 points, and that was the difference. So Trump now has to unite his party and then rally the independents. Well, how does he do that? Policy.
Both of you young ladies, I was talking back and forth with you, and you said, look, you would vote for Nikki Haley. That's someone that you can see yourself voting for. But you said if it gets between Donald Trump and Joe Biden again, you will vote for who?
I will vote for President Biden. I have 5 grandchildren. 4 of them are girls, and I'm very concerned about women's issues and democracy.
Wow. Say it with me. That's gotta hurt. In the wake of the New Hampshire primary this past week, there have been quite a few takeaways. First of all, we were able to establish common ground between Joe Biden and GOP candidate Nikki Haley. Both of them are 100% convinced that Nikki Haley is not, in fact, Nancy Pelosi. You can't say the same for the other candidate.
Last night, Trump is at a rally.
You know, Nikki Haley.
And he's going on and on mentioning me multiple times as to why I didn't handle January 6th better.
Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people. They don't want to talk about that.
I wasn't in office then. They're saying you got confused.
You have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. You have ID to buy a loaf of bread. What? I'm driving over a road where it's almost all paper. And you know, you can see paper. I know paper. I know cans. But all the time now we see whales washing up on shore because of the wind.
Got confused. He got confused and said he was running against Obama. He never ran against Obama. Put our country at risk like this.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
We watched live as a grown man plunged to new levels of cringe to kiss the ring.
She actually appointed you, Tim. And think of it, appointed, and you're the senator of his state, and she endorsed me. You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's...
And we were offered a stark reminder of the sheer misogyny that fuels the coal fire that is Donald Trump.
And when I watched her in the fancy dress, that probably wasn't so fancy.
But aside from that, statistically, the takeaways don't bode well for the MAGA crowd. So much so that not only were many Fox News hosts forced to admit that the New Hampshire primary proved to be a stronger showing of President Biden versus Trump.
You know, one of the questions that's on my mind is this issue of sort of the quasi-incumbency, right? Because the argument is, if you treat him like an incumbent, he should be around 84%, right? He should have almost all the Republican votes, but he's not. And he's running against people who are giving him a little bit of a run for his money. So, Britt, how do you judge that? How do you figure out whether or not he has enough growth potential to beat Biden?
If you think of him as an incumbent, this showing tonight's weak, right? I mean, he should be doing better. And it's also a sign of weakness that the independents and others who voted in this primary were not welcomed by the Trump campaign and by a lot of his supporters.
This was actually a fairly good night for Joe Biden. When you look at our voter analysis, only 10% said, I would not vote for Joe Biden if he's the nominee. He won a plurality of voters who said he was too old. He won a majority of voters who are upset about the Gaza war. So the divides in the Democrat Party, and this is a small sample size, but perhaps aren't as stark as one would think. Nikki Haley voters said, I would not vote for Trump.
But many Republican voters that they interviewed vowed to vote across party lines if it meant keeping Trump out of office.
Both of you young ladies, I was talking back and forth with you, and you said, look, you would vote for Nikki Haley. That's someone that you can see yourself voting for. But you said if it gets between Donald Trump and Joe Biden again, you will vote for who?
I will vote for President Biden. I have 5 grandchildren. 4 of them are girls, and I'm very concerned about women's issues and democracy.
Okay, thank you.
Some New Hampshire voters are grateful for President Biden's forgiveness efforts.
I wasn't able to pay my loans back over so many years, and they went into default, and that was holding me back from being able to go to college again, which I want to do. So this helped me out with my credit as well.
College loan forgiveness is one issue that all the GOP candidates agree on. None of them are for student loan forgiveness. They all oppose it.
But the thing is, this is not just anecdotal evidence either. While merely 10% of Democratic voters said that they wouldn't vote for Joe Biden, despite many in the media leading voters to believe that there is a quarry-sized divide in the Democratic Party, 7 in 10 Nikki Haley voters said that they will not vote for Trump, even if he's the nominee.
Well, I voted for Nikki Haley because I was voting against Donald Trump.
And what propelled you to get to this point?
I'm 74 years old. I've lived in a constitutional democracy all my life. I want to remain that way, and I want my grandchildren to grow up in one, not a dictatorship.
And I'm curious, over the last 2 elections, have you voted Trump in the past? Was it something where you voted for him, you trusted him, and you were disappointed?
Yes, I voted for him in 2016. I am a registered Republican, and I regretted that vote almost immediately.
This was familiar to a trend set in Iowa, where nearly half of those who backed GOP candidate Nikki Haley said that they would vote for President Biden over Trump in a general election. Republican voters in New Hampshire expressed major concerns about Trump, with one CBS News poll showing that 47% of Republican primary voters said they believe Trump would be unfit to serve as president if he were to be convicted in one of his many upcoming criminal trials. Proving that this interview, while grade A viewing entertainment, is not an anomaly. It's actually indicative of the divide between Republican voters, between those who don't align with the extreme MAGA agenda.
Joe Biden, it's the first write-in campaign in history. What happened in New Hampshire? He's on track to get more votes than Barack Obama did in 2012. You talk about Dean Phillips, he got 20%, sure, but let's talk about the unity. There's only 10% of Democratic voters, self-reporting this, that would not support Joe Biden. We are completely unified.
But that's the number you expect from an incumbent, right? I mean, that's a normal incumbent number.
But we've been talking about Donald Trump as a quasi-incumbent, at least. He has a record to run on, right? He's acting like he's an incumbent. He actually thinks that he won in 2020, so he's like half an incumbent. And 50%. He gets 50,000 votes, and 70% of his competitors, voters won't even go for him. But I hear about this basement campaign all the time from 2020, and even from now. We don't see Joe Biden, and it's shocking that we get all this footage somehow. But he is out there, and he's doing meaningful things. He was with the United Auto Workers today, getting their endorsement. And the president talking about how Donald Trump, when they had a strike in 2019, didn't do anything. Yesterday, he had a rally for reproductive rights in Virginia. It's going to be a crucial issue for us. Monday, the Reproductive Health Care Access Task Force, the U.S. Conference of Mayors last Friday. He went to Raleigh on Thursday to talk about broadband access and to meet with an educator who had his student loans forgiven and the impact it's had with his family. And by the way, they made some very meaningful content out of all of that. The man is not hiding, and he's doing well, and Democrats are happy with their choice.
And you don't have to just look at Nikki Haley voters to see this divide. I mean, look at the split in the House, to everything from the Speaker to the bipartisan border bill that many Republicans want to send to President Biden's desk.
Do you think this is what he wants, the issue, Donald Trump? This is what he's doing?
I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump. And the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border, and someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, "Hey, save that problem. Don't solve it. Let me take credit for solving it later."
But I found very interesting reporting we're getting today that Donald Trump and his allies are pressuring Republicans in Congress not to come to some sort of compromise on the border and immigration. We actually know that they're getting pretty close. Senators from both parties are working very hard here. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell told the Republican caucus that they're in a tough position because Trump doesn't actually want Biden to be able to, quote, get a win on this by signing something, even though signing that piece of bipartisan legislation would help with the border. Wouldn't fix it, but it would help. But there are a lot of Republicans who believe that this compromise, Democrats control the Senate and Republicans control the House. We have to compromise. They are close. Donald Trump is telling his allies not to vote for it so he can run on it in November. That, to me, is dereliction of duty. Biden is ready to sign something if Congress will send it to him.
But can't, because the rest would rather put Trump over country and do what he says.
Mitch McConnell, I thought that was shameful, what was reported out. That he's just completely rolling over and capitulating. Don't even get me started with the weakness of the current Speaker of the House. I mean, they don't want a deal, period, full stop. They don't want a deal. They don't want to make this a quote unquote campaign win for Joe Biden. It says everything you need to know about the fraud that they're perpetuating on the issue of the border. They want to make this a political issue. Consistently, they have wanted to make it ever since there were a few brave souls with that Gang of 8. If we all remember those black and white movie days.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that.
And ever since there, they just walk away, they run away. The first day he was in office, not the next day, the same day he gets sworn in, he puts out a comprehensive immigration plan. And yet you didn't have a counter. They had no strategy in terms of the Republican Party, even combating that. They just wanted to kill it.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.